This morning I am in the small Bavarian town of Bad Tölz. It's close to the Austrian border. It's a gorgeous market town, as you can see from the views behind me. But this town has a particularly dark past, all connected to the Waffen SS. So during World War II, Germany would often hail its high-scoring aces from the Wehrmacht, the Luftwaffe, the Kriegsmarine and the Waffen SS as heroes, putting them on pedestals and using them as part of their Nazi propaganda machine. There was one, though, that is still talked about to this day. Born into a small Bavarian farming village, he would initially join the army and then transfer to the Waffen SS. First of all, he would deploy to the Eastern Front as a commander on the Stug, the Sturmgewehr 3 assault gun, and then later he would come here to the Junkerschule at Bad Tölz to become a commissioned officer in the Waffen SS and then go on to command Tiger tanks on both the Eastern and Western fronts, most notoriously known for his actions on the 13th of June 1944. So welcome to my channel, everybody. I'm John from World War II Wayfinder. Thank you for joining me. And if you like my videos, I would love it if you'd hit that subscribe button and tap that notification bell so you're the first to know whenever I release new content onto this channel. So today I am at the former Waffen SS Junkerschule, or officer school, here in the small Bavarian town of Bad Tölz near the Austrian border.
In Bad Tölz wurde im Jahre 1934 die erste SS-Junkerschule der Waffen-SS eröffnet. Hier wird der aktive Führernachwuchs der Waffen-SS ausgebildet. Er hat sich inzwischen an allen Fronten dieses Krieges bewährt. Ein neuer Lehrgang von Freiwilligen, die sich bereits vor dem Feind ausgezeichnet haben, rückt ein. Exerzieren und waffentechnische Übungen auf dem Kasernenhof sind auch hier die Grundlage der militärischen Ausbildung.
So Michael Wittmann was born in the small Bavarian farming village of Vogeltal in Bavaria on the 22nd of April 1914, and throughout much of his youth he would be part of that farming community, working the land and not really leaving that area and not knowing what was in the wider world around him. But with the rise of the Nazi Party in 1934, he would join the Freiwilliger Arbeitsdienst, which was basically the labour service, and again continuing that agricultural work, but for the betterment of the state rather than for his individual family unit and the community that he grew up in. So during this time in the Freiwilliger Arbeitsdienst, Wittmann excelled at it. He was very much a team player, hard worker, and understood the importance of service. But like a lot of young men in the mid-30s, with the re-emergence of the German military machine, he decided that actually he was going to go and pursue a career in the army. So he left the FAD and signed up for a 2-year enlistment with the Wehrmacht, joining the 19th Infantry Regiment in the small Bavarian town of Freising, just north of Munich. And it was here that he first saw the latest and greatest Mark I Panzer. So with his 2 years enlistment in the army complete, toward the end of 1936, Wittmann left the army and went to work on the railways for a short period of time. But it was during this period that he noticed a new formation, the SS, the Allgemeine SS specifically, had caught his eye, and he decided to enlist with them and dedicate himself to serving Germany in that way. Now, you have to remember, at this time he was a young man, and Germany was swept up in this new wave of nationalism. Everybody was starting to join a uniformed service of some description, be it military or the pseudo-military services that sprung up during this time. However, during this period, Wittmann found the administrative work that he was tasked with to be quite dull, and he had excelled as a soldier in the Wehrmacht, so he decided to transfer over. So Wittmann's initial training in the Leibstandarte would consist of the training required to fulfill the role of armoured car crewman. And it was during this time that he was introduced to vehicles such as the Sonderkraftfahrzeug 222 and the 232. Now, 1 year later, in March 1938, Wittmann would sign up to be a party member of the NSDAP, or simply put, the Nazi Party. Now, from the research that I've done, it doesn't really seem clear whether it was out of a true devotion to the cause, or whether it was more of a expected thing that a young man in the Leibstandarte should do, especially if all his peer group were signing up, that he should sign up as well. So unless somebody knows, and if you do, please put it in the comments. I would love to know if you've got definitive proof one way or another. But for one thing we can say without fear and conviction was that he was a signed up member of the Nazi Party, and therefore by definition that would, in my mind at least, make him a Nazi. That's the rule of thumb that I personally apply. If you had a Nazi Party number, you were a Nazi. End of. So jumping forward a couple of years to 1941, Wittmann would be present with the first SS Leibstandarte Adolf Hitler for Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of Russia in June 1941. And it was during this time that he would command a Sturmgeschütz 3, a Stug 3. This was a support gun that would work with the infantry. It wasn't designed to take out tanks. It had a short 75mm barrel. It was very effective though in the infantry support role, but it wasn't a true tank, as it didn't have a traversable turret. The whole vehicle had to move. However, during this time, Wittmann would score numerous kills against tanks. His crew worked very well together, and he was an exceptionally skilled leader in this particular military role. Late 1941 though, Wittmann would receive injuries that would take him out of the fight for a few days, and it was during this time that he found that he had been accepted to attend the school behind me, which was the Waffen SS-Junkerschule here at Bad Tölz. Now, for those that don't know, the officer school here is the equivalent of the West Point College in the United States, or the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst in Great Britain. They all fulfilled the same purpose, and that is to take officer cadets and educate them in all things required to be an officer in that particular branch of service. And the school here at Bad Tölz was absolutely no different. So the school here was established in 1937, and the premise was that recruits, officer cadets, would undergo a 5-month training course in party indoctrination, leadership, physical training, weapons training, all the military basics that those either entering a service, or if you're then going to become leaders in whatever role, that you need to be proficient in order to go and do that task. And the training that Wittmann undertook here was no different. The course was quite difficult. The idea was not to highlight yourself to the instructors, but to just get your head down and be exceptionally good at what was required of the officer cadets. They would experience about a 1/3 loss rate, so for every 3 candidates going through, every 3 officer cadets going through the school, you'd expect to lose at least one of those during that 5-month period. So the loss rate was reasonable. They didn't just accept anybody onto the final graduation at the end of the course. Now, one interesting point, or one point that I believe is interesting, that here at the school the emphasis was placed on the officer cadets, that whilst they would lead men under their command, that they were part of that team and not above it. And that, at least to me, shows that for all of the evil that the Waffen SS embodied, that they were able to understand some, within their own ranks, some good leadership traits, which I think is quite an interesting departure from how we would normally view, and rightly so, how we would view the Waffen SS. So Wittmann's training here finished in September 1942, at which point he was posted as a 2nd lieutenant to the Panzer Replacement and Training Battalion 500 at Paderborn in northern Germany. And then it was from Paderborn that he would redeploy to France for a short period of time to train on the new Tiger I. So from France, Wittmann and the rest of the Leibstandarte would redeploy back to the Eastern Front in January 1943. And initially Wittmann was there as a commander of a Panzer III, not the Tiger. However, by April 1943, Wittmann was in command of his own Tiger I. So it was during this time that Wittmann's legendary status would begin to take hold. Commanding his Tiger, he would fight at the Battle of Kursk, and his number of tank kills had really racked up at this point. Now, with the failure of Operation Citadel and the effects of the Soviet onslaught on the Eastern Front, the Leibstandarte was withdrawn from the Eastern Front and sent to the west to refit, and in expectation of the Allied invasion that was going to come somewhere in France. So by January 1944, Wittmann had already been personally decorated with the Knight's Cross to the Iron Cross by Adolf Hitler himself, and then later on in early 1944 he was awarded the Oak Leaves to the Knight's Cross. And by this time Wittmann really was starting to stand out as a poster boy for the Nazi propaganda machine and the panzer arm of the German armed forces. So with the Allied invasion taking place on the 6th of June 1944 in Normandy, the 1st SS and Wittmann were called into action. So by the 6th of June 1944, Wittmann had been promoted to Hauptsturmführer, which was the equivalent rank of captain, and he was the company commander for the 2nd company of the 101st SS Heavy Panzer Battalion. During the chaotic days of early June 1944, the Leibstandarte would be moved up into the fight up and around Caen. But it was on the 13th of June that Wittmann would carry out one of the most incredible tank commander actions, sadly at the cost of many British lives. Now, I'm not going to go into detail here about that particular action because there's already loads and loads of documentaries and books and internet sites that already cover off the actions of Wittmann in his Tiger at Villers-Bocage on the 13th of June 1944. But after that, as a result of his actions there that day, he was then in late June awarded swords to the Oak Leaves for his Knight's Cross, really cementing him for probably for the rest of time as one of Nazi Germany's best tank aces. Now, not the best, it has to be said, and by the time of his death on the 8th of August 1944, during the fighting between Caen and Falaise as part of Operation Totalize, or against Operation Totalize, the offensive launched by the British and Canadians in that area. He had amassed a record of around 138 enemy tanks, a similar number of artillery pieces and self-propelled guns, and then an unknown number of soft-skin and lightly armoured vehicles. They say he died on the 8th of August along with the rest of his crew. They were killed during a counterattack against the Allies. Now, there's a lot of debate that reigns between, was it Roy Eakins of the Northants Yeomanry that got him with his Firefly, or was it the Canadian Sherbrooke Fusiliers? Ultimately, it's kind of a moot point. It doesn't really matter. All we know is that on the 8th of August 1944, Wittmann's tank was destroyed, and him along with the crew were killed, and for a number of years they were buried by the side of the field where they had perished. But I think it was in either the late 70s, early 80s, they were then reinterred at Le Combe Military Cemetery in Normandy, where their grave remains to this day. So thank you for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed this short episode about Michael Wittmann, his early life and his time here at the Junkerschule in Bad Tölz. Something a little bit different to the usual Villers-Bocage and controversy over who killed him on the 8th of August 1944 stories that often float around YouTube and the rest of the internet. If you have enjoyed it and you've not already, hit that subscribe button. There's loads more content coming up throughout the year, so I hope you'll stay with me, and I'd love to know if you can get in the comments below. Let me know what you think of Michael Wittmann, his skill as a tank commander, and any other thoughts on the subject, and quite happy to discuss the theories behind, was it the Sherbrooke Fusiliers or was it the Northants Yeomanry that provided the coup de grace that took him out? So let me know. Love to hear what you're thinking. All right, take care, and I will see you all in the next one.